Well, thanks for joining us, folks who could not be here tonight. We are deciding to record this panel with our lovely alumni from environmental studies so that you can hear their wisdom about their study abroad experiences, their time at Brandeis, and how it's kind of led them to where they are now. So my name is Ashley Trobasacci. I am a study abroad advisor, and I'm here with three alums. I'm just going to introduce them all real quick before we get going. So Ione Hughes graduated in 2019 from Brandeis with majors in environmental studies and politics and a minor in legal studies. As a junior, she studied abroad on the SIT Madagascar Biodiversity and Natural Resource Management Program. As a student, she was a study abroad ambassador, orientation leader, a member of SCRAM, an office assistant at IBS, and research assistant for Harvard Forest with Professor Brian Donahue. Since graduating from Brandeis, Ione has held a series of roles, including program coordinator for the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, program coordinator for an energy efficiency consulting company, and began her current role as a program coordinator for the Massachusetts Division of Ecological Restoration in October 2020. Allison Marill graduated in 2017 from Brandeis with majors in environmental studies and economics. As a junior, she studied abroad on the DIS Copenhagen program. As a student, she was co-founder of the Brandeis Rooftop Farm and the president of the club. She was also co-founder of the undergraduate Net Impact chapter and participated in the Environmental Health and Justice JBS program. Since graduating from Brandeis, Allison spent a year interning at the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies in Israel, and since returning began her work as an ESG analyst at Institutional Shareholder Services, where she assesses companies' non-financial performance on material, social, and environmental challenges. And our third alum with us tonight is Hannah Stewart, who graduated in 2018 from Brandeis with majors in environmental studies and HSSP, along with a minor in English. As a junior, she studied abroad on the DIS Copenhagen program. As a student, she was president of the Ballroom Dance Club, founding treasurer of the Farmers Club and the Rooftop Farm, and a TA for Fundamentals of Environmental Challenges and Atmospheric Civics and Diplomacy, World Politics of Air Pollution, Ozone Depletion, and Climate Change. Hannah is currently an editorial assistant for Harborside, an oncological research publishing house. Additionally, she started a blog and is freelancing as a science writer. Thank you all for joining us and giving up some of your precious time to chat with us about your experiences. I guess my first question would be, if you don't mind telling us a little bit more about your time at Brandeis, what you were involved in. Like typical Brandeis students, I feel like I read out a long list of every possible activity or major or minor you could have done while you were here. So if you wouldn't just give people a little more info about what your days were like and what kinds of things you were involved in. And I guess we could start with you, Ione.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, like every Brandesian, I feel like I had a lot going on the daily. I think I was most involved in the Brandeis club soccer team. I was a captain for 3 years and definitely was a good leadership opportunity for me. I also was a study abroad ambassador, obviously. That was really fun for me. Yeah, and I spent a lot of time studying for environmental studies and politics and legal studies courses. Yeah, learned a lot, had a good time.
Awesome, thanks.
I can go. So I was a double major in environmental studies and economics. And I really took advantage of Professor Laura Golden's classes. I know she's no longer, she retired, she's no longer with the university. But the big thing that came out of it, she had a Greening the Ivory Tower course where we did projects, sustainability projects around campus. And that's where the Brandeis Rooftop Community Farm came from, which I also did with Hannah. And so that grew into Brandeis Farmers Club. So that was like that was my big activity because we were really trying to grow it. Well, we had to get the farm, get the funding for it for the Brandeis Sustainability Fund, and then run the farm and make it sustainable through a club. I'm not sure what it's like today, but that was my big thing at Brandeis. And yeah.
Awesome.
I was a double major with environmental studies and HSSP. And so most of my academic sphere was about finding that intersection between the natural environment and the human built environment. So that ranged from the Farmers Club and also reaching into citizen science with Professor Colleen Hitchcock, which actually is what I ended up doing my senior thesis topic about.
Cool. Awesome. And so we are hosting this event in part because you are all study abroad alumni. And so I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about your study abroad experience, where you went, and maybe looking back on it now, are there things that stand out as sort of highlights or challenges for you in your experience?
Same order or?
Whatever way you want to go. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're ready.
Yeah, let's keep it simple. Yeah, so I ended up going to Madagascar, specifically the Northeast in Antilla. And it was a really incredible experience, definitely the coolest thing I did in my 4 years at Brandeis. And I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me about that experience is a lot of the times environmental studies tend to be pretty focused on the environment, obviously. And one of the things I really loved about this program is how much it immersed you in like the culture of Madagascar as well, and really like pushed you to challenge, you know, your perceptions of environmental science in America and the way that we interact with it, especially with regard to race and all of that. Environmental justice, I think, as a passion of mine, was the biggest thing that came out of my time in Madagascar. And that's something I'm very passionate about now. And it's something that I really work to, you know, make a part of my current work journey and all of my time in my past positions. So yeah, and then I think one of the biggest challenges while I was there was learning how to speak the language and overcoming that challenge. Even though it's not necessarily directly related to environmental studies, it was, you know, really helpful to sort of push myself really far out of my comfort zone, which is really useful in like any aspect of life and wherever you take your journey. So.
Yeah, totally.
I can go. So I had, in a way, almost 2 study abroad experiences. So my junior year, I did DIS in Denmark, and the environmental policy was like my focus. But then after graduation, I spent a year in Israel at the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies, and I was an intern there. But they have like a very, very large component of that is study abroad. And I kind of, in a sense, got that study abroad experience there too. So, I mean, I can speak to that experience also. But yeah, DIS is really great. And also Hannah will probably have lots to say in it too. It's really great because I would say the classes are a big highlight because they really try to put you, like, they bring in speakers, you go on like course trips together, and for environmental policy, it's like I thought it was a really good place to really see like what good policy looks like and to learn from the best, and then bring that back here and kind of get inspired. So definitely recommend that if you're interested in the environmental policy route. The challenge, or maybe a downside, is that it could be a little difficult to get to know locals. That was my personal experience. Maybe you had a different one. But I had a homestay and we were very close, and I actually like stayed with them. I visited a few years later and stayed with them again. So I've really gotten to know them. But outside of that, like I didn't really make many Danish friends. And then with the Arava Institute, it's very community based, and honestly, I would say that was like a huge highlight of that program. So it's at a kibbutz in like this almost the southernmost part of Israel, and you're living with Israelis, Palestinians, and just international students, and you live like 50 people all close together in this kibbutz. So it's a communal style living, and it's really, really like you really get to know people very well. And I just walked away with that with like amazing connections, like meaningful conversations. I highly recommend. That was a really, really good experience. Ari can also attest to that as well. But then another challenge though with that program is that it's just a very remote location. So to get to Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, it's like 4 hours by bus. And sometimes, so a big component of that program is also peace building, and it can get a bit intense. And there can be times when you kind of want to escape it and like go stay with a friend in Tel Aviv. So that the locational issue is like a little hard, but otherwise also really great experience.
As Allison mentioned, I also studied abroad with DIS in Copenhagen, but my program focused more on sustainability. One of the benefits that I absolutely loved about the DIS program was the classes that they offer that Brandeis doesn't have analogs to. For example, I took a class entirely upon sustainable transportation. And so for each class session, we studied a different mode of getting around Copenhagen. So for example, one week we were literally cycling around the city, and another we were taking tours on 5 different subways. So the opportunity to take classes that aren't offered by your home institution is an amazing part of study abroad, but about the DIS program in particular, with Copenhagen's inherent sustainable green focus, is an awesome opportunity to just learn more and see all of these ideas and ideals being put into practice. One of the big downsides to the DIS program, like Allison said, you don't really get to know a lot of Danish locals because there is a very healthy Brandeis population. So it would be very easy to remain close with people you already know from Brandeis. I would say for a unique downside, I'd say probably getting used to how everything is entirely different. So just the culture shock of getting to learn an entirely different way of living your day-to-day life.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like all of those things are definitely things we hear in the office of both highlights and the challenges. And all of those programs, DIS, Arava Institute, and SIT Madagascar are all approved by our office. So you can talk to advisors about any of those if you're interested. I guess next question, sort of shifting to post-Brandeis life, what have you been doing and what have been some highlights? Where do you feel like you've sort of been going on your journey now, just a few years out from undergrad?
Big question.
I know, right?
Way to keep them easy, Ashley.
Sorry, no pressure.
Yeah, definitely like challenging leaving Brandeis, I think in general. It's really easy when you're in school to sort of, have a path and everyone's sort of on the same path. And then afterwards you have to be like, wait, what do I do now? It's 100% up to me. So for me, I was unemployed for a while, like a lot of people are right out of Brandeis. And I feel like that was a really important growing period for me. And it's actually happened twice thanks to the pandemic. So I feel like I want to focus on that a little bit just to highlight the fact that not everyone's journey is going to be linear and not everyone is going to get a job right out of college and not everyone is going to have that perfect path that we all think we're going to have when we're seniors. So yeah, I actually worked a few temp positions, as Ashley mentioned. The most exciting one and the one that actually led to my current position was I got super lucky and managed to get a job at the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs for a couple of months, working for the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act office. They love acronyms there. So that's the EEA and MEPA. And I was also working as a paralegal for the Office of General Counsel for the EEA. And I made a lot of connections there and ultimately couldn't get a position working there. It was just temporary, but kind of bounced around a couple of other temporary positions, working in energy consulting and working in IT actually as a technical writer. Gained a lot of really random experience. Also worked for POA Communities, which is a really cool organization for affordable housing in the Boston area. And in October, I ended up getting an interview for my current position because of the connections that I'd made at my first temporary position. So yeah, and I'm really happy to be where I am. I've been working here for a while, have a great group of people. And I work on the fiscal team as a program coordinator for the DER, Division of Ecological Restoration. And we basically, just to keep it really simple, we give money to people all around Massachusetts, and we work on a variety of different wetlands restoration projects. So my job is a lot of contracting and basically making sure that the money gets where it needs to go. Yeah, so it's really exciting. It's really fun. And it certainly wasn't linear.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that too. And also when you say you were lucky, you worked hard to get that interview and even temp job. So give yourself some credit.
I would also say I didn't have a completely linear path after graduation. I decided like late in senior year to do the Arva Institute, the internship there, and I really wanted to spend more time abroad. And this was also something like back when I was choosing study abroad before, like for junior year, I had considered it and had wanted to do it, but chose not to do it. So I kind of did it in a way because I didn't have the first part was I didn't really have a job lined up after graduation, but also this was just something that I inherently wanted to do. And I felt like it was my opportunity to do it right then. And that it would be harder to like, do a job for 2 years and then see about an internship. It was a sort of thing like do right after school. Part of me was like, maybe I want to move to Israel. And then I got there, I'm like, no, I don't want to move to Israel. So I did that for the first year out of school. I graduated in 2017. So it was my first year and I left the Arva and I didn't have a job lined up when I left. I did get really good connections, and actually I had interned for the executive director of the Arva Institute, and he was really helpful, like helping me with my job search afterwards. But I actually didn't get my current job through those connections. So right now, so I got a job like a few months after. So since like the fall of 2018, I've been working at Institutional Shareholder Services as an ESG analyst. So ESG stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. And it's a type of responsible investment, basically looking at social and environmental performance of companies. So I do ratings of companies to basically they get a grade on how well they perform for different social and environmental aspects. And I focused on healthcare companies. So that has definitely been like an interesting area because with healthcare, there are definitely a lot of environmental issues like with medical waste and climate change, but a big focus is actually on social issues with healthcare access, healthcare disparities, like product safety. So that's been a really good opportunity. Like post school, I just feel like I've learned a lot through my job and have kind of moved into this other area and a broader focus of what I think of as sustainability.
Yeah.
I also had a stretch of unemployment time immediately after graduation. So I felt that in my soul, Ione. It can be hard on mental health. But actually the path to my current position at Harborside began while studying abroad. While I was studying abroad, I started working on my senior thesis project, which involved getting to interview several citizen science researchers while I was studying abroad in Copenhagen and a few other European countries. It was much easier to interview them while I was abroad because time zones are a thing and they can be difficult otherwise. After doing those interviews and writing up my senior thesis, that was when I discovered how much I love talking to people, talking to researchers about the work they do, and how much I loved writing about it, especially writing for an audience. So since then, I've taken my path trying to write about science for general public audiences. And I was extremely fortunate that a publishing house here on Long Island was willing to take a chance on me and give me my first shot in the publishing industry.
Awesome. Very cool. That was a beautiful lead-in, Hannah. Thanks to our next question, which is, would you say that studying abroad had an impact on your career? And I guess whether it was directly related in sort of Hannah's way and kind of led you to what you wanted to do, or even sort of more abstract, do you feel like there were skills or experiences or kinds of things that you encountered in study abroad that you feel like have stayed with you or led you to your work now?
Yeah, I would say 100%. There's no doubt in my mind. I think just like generally study abroad really just like pushed me out of my comfort zone. And even if I had done something that wasn't related to environmental studies, I think it would have impacted me regardless, just living in a new place and being forced to sort of like learn a new language. And that was what I was looking for out of a study abroad program. So in that sense, definitely. In another sense, like I talked about earlier, I definitely found a really intense passion for environmental justice and sort of seeing the way that things were in Madagascar, I was able to bring that passion back to the United States and see, how much work we have to do there. Here as well. And that's something that I really bring, I think, to my current job, is try to do, there's a new environmental justice initiative that the EEA is bringing sort of to all of their umbrella divisions. And that's really, really exciting for me. And I try to stay very involved in that as much as I can. And yeah, sort of just like cemented my interest in environmental studies, but also took me a little bit off on a different path that I didn't necessarily think that I would be interested in before. So.
Well, I would just say some more like hard skills from study abroad is like learning to like work well with people from other cultures, and especially that was like with the Arava. It was just incredibly international, and most people were from the Middle East. So now in my current job, actually a lot of people I work with are based in Germany and also in the Philippines. Most of my team is not in the US. So I really like have to like every day, we've learned a lot of like working with people from other cultures. And I think that I would have felt a little bit more unprepared for it had I not studied abroad and had I not known so many other people from all over the world. So definitely like in the workplace, there could be times like it's really incredibly helpful to just kind of have more like cultural understanding, or when you approach an issue, know that like somebody could be approaching an issue just because they have like a different background than you. So I'm definitely grateful for having the study abroad experience. And then just, I think in general, just like the soft skills from study abroad, a lot of it is just like being outside of your comfort zone. And I think that's just an important skill in general to be able to navigate that in the future when you have other situations where you're outside of your comfort zone.
In addition to what I was saying before, I would say another great thing I learned while studying abroad was the confidence of I can handle this. So while I studied abroad in Copenhagen mostly, I also took every opportunity I could to visit every other country in Northern/Central Europe. So I would be in Czech Republic on one weekend, I might be in Brussels or Amsterdam the next weekend. And in a lot of these countries, I didn't speak a lick of the language. So the fact that I was able to navigate around these cities, take care of myself for a weekend, and figure out how to handle being in a completely unfamiliar environment was turned into a massive confidence boost in anything I'm doing here now after graduation, because I can say, if I can navigate the Prague's bus public transportation system, I can handle whatever John in accounting is throwing at me next.
Awesome. I guess shifting to the sort of more academic side of things, or the Brandeis focused side of things, how would you say your studies at Brandeis prepared you for sort of where you are now, or where you headed afterwards? Are there certain like courses or things you were involved in academically on campus that you helped?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really appreciated about Brandeis was sort of the opportunity to take a lot of different kinds of classes and still sort of use that to go towards, one major. There's a lot of flexibility there. So I got to work with a lot of different professors and work with a lot of different kinds of people with a lot of different interests. And I think being in a small university was really helpful for that. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about, the campus and the culture there. So I think more specifically, I definitely enjoyed a lot of my classes with Colleen Hitchcock as well. I think Hannah mentioned her, give her a shout out, and Dan Perlman. Both of them sort of really helped me to figure out that environmental studies was my passion, and that, research was something that I was interested in. And I have to give a shout out to Brian Donahue as well for letting me do some research with him, because that definitely helped me love to see Harvard Forest on the resume. So yeah.
Well, I would also just second that with the great professors in the environmental studies program, and the hands-on experiences were like the two big highlights for me. I originally wasn't going to major in environmental studies. I thought I wanted to do actually international studies. In the freshman year, I took the intro class with Dan Perlman. Actually, one of the big takeaways from that class too was about, I just remember him talking about the importance of asking questions and how knowing how to ask a question was better than knowing the answer. So just in general, it's just like always something that I keep in mind since that class. But I really enjoyed the tree walks and then like the hands-on aspects of the major. And then from there, I took a lot of classes with Laura Golden, who is no longer with the university, but she opened a lot of doors for me, and I'm really grateful for that. I mean, through her Creating the Ivory Tower course, that's where the farm came about. And I just think that was like a huge growing experience for me. And I also hope it was beneficial for the community too. And then through that, I think this is also no longer offered, but there was an environmental health and justice semester. And so it was like this thing, it was an entire semester just with like 12 students, Professor Laura Golden, and then a few adjunct professors came on. And it was just very hands-on. We traveled to Kentucky to learn about the impacts of mountaintop removal for coal mining. And then the big highlight, we did a study on occupational exposure on Black hair salons. So actually a big takeaway from that is that ventilation is very important. And I learned that through the study before COVID. So yeah, the program was just incredible. And I don't think that I would have necessarily have had those types of experiences anywhere else.
One of my favorite parts about Brandeis was that it did everything it could to avoid pigeonholing any student into one major. So you could take 3 different majors or have 5 minors. And I think that was a truly phenomenal experience for me, because I mean that the real world isn't defined into a handful of majors. If you have an interest in my case, research, and specifically environmental research and writing, there is a space for me in the real world. I don't have to niche myself into a specific topic. So the way that Brandeis allows you to explore all your potential interests is a wonderful opportunity to figure out beyond the set 5 or 7 majors that you mostly associate with when you think about college when you're growing up.
It's beautifully
Awesome.
said, Hannah.
Yeah, really. It's one of the things I find, most valuable too about working here is that everyone is so interesting because they're so interdisciplinary, and you get to like live that out. Wonderful. Well, we're wrapping up with last question here. What is a tip that you would give students at Brandeis now, either those who are just kind of like starting their Brandeis careers, trying out environmental studies courses, or those who are kind of on the later end of the spectrum, maybe getting ready for their own graduation and job searches?
So many tips. I would say the biggest thing for an incoming first year or someone maybe a little bit newer to Brandeis would be, I think we've all sort of touched on this, get to know your professors, talk to them as much as you can. They're all so friendly. They're honestly kind of bored sometimes at office hours, I would notice. So just go talk to them. At the very least, you'll have a nice conversation and like make a connection that might help you get a job in the future. It might just be like a nice contact to reach out to. I actually just emailed Dan Perlman the other day because I had my coworkers tend to send around opportunities, and I saw one for undergraduate students, and figured pass this along, and we had a nice conversation. And like, you never know what's going to come out of just getting to know your professors really well. So take advantage of that, take advantage of everything. For a graduate, a soon-to-be graduate, I think, again, another thing that we've sort of touched on, there's nothing wrong with taking your own path. And like, there's nothing wrong with maybe not getting a job immediately after college. There's nothing wrong with taking some time to figure yourself out. Like, don't compare yourself to anyone else, because you know that the only thing that you're going to see is like the polished version that someone's putting on Instagram. And people aren't posting about unemployment. They're not posting about how much they hate their job. They're just posting the good stuff. And I think like in terms of mental health, that can be really challenging nowadays when the only thing that we're seeing is what people are truly putting on the internet. So just like take care of yourself and, you know, don't worry about what anyone else is doing. Just worry about how you are doing and how you feel and do the best you can.
Cool. My advice is a little similar. For students starting out, I would just recommend like taking as like a lot of variety of classes. Don't just, if you have an idea of what you want going into school, definitely like still take like an intro class for it your freshman year, but try to like to think of something different. And also, I think a really big thing at Brandeis is to like have a ton of majors and minors, and that's super great. But I mean, maybe it's like more of a personal regret. Like, I just wish I had done like even a greater variety of classes, because it can be hard when you're like trying to like get everything you need for the major, like just with your schedule to fit in other classes. Like, I wish I had taken more like HSSP classes while I was at Brandeis, but you never know like where your future is going to lead, like what could be useful down the road. And then for graduating students, kind of on the same line of what was said, I like going back to it. I just wish that I had been less stressed out senior year about what comes after Brandeis. And I just wish I had just enjoyed being a senior. I had a lot of friends who like their like next steps were like done in like the fall of senior year. So it was really stressful for me to like see like somebody already had their job set up, or like they were like had their medical, like they're going to medical school after they like were already accepted. So to kind of be in that environment, and some of that was like, you know, you can personally handle that, but just understand like different like majors, or like there are different timelines for everything. And so it's like totally okay to not have something lined up, and just kind of accept that everything will be okay, and just enjoy the experience, because it is a unique experience being your senior year at Brandeis.
My advice I would probably give to both the incoming Brandesians and the outgoing Brandesians, network. If you're an introvert, it's hard. Oh, trust me, I know how hard it is to network when you're an introvert. But I would say all of my most meaningful experiences and positions that I've ever held, pre-Brandeis, post-Brandeis, have always come around first as a networking opportunity, and then afterwards based on my own skills or experiences. So my advice would be go talk to professors during office hours. If there's an event, chase after a business card or ask for any other contact information, and keep talking to people as much as you are able to make yourself reach out to people, and keep those networks humming. If not for you, then also for your friends. You never know when you might be able to connect someone from an entirely different major with someone that you met at a random networking event.
Such great advice. Thank you all so much. This is wonderful. I feel like, yeah, I'm going to take all this into and see what I can fix in my own life. But we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and share your insights with everyone, your wisdom. And congratulations for all the great stuff that you're doing in the world. And thanks so much for staying connected to Brandeis community. But we appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course.